The opening scene establishes a powerful sense of global confrontation without a single shot being fired. It begins at sea, where Russian and Chinese naval forces move in coordinated formation across calm but ominous waters. The ships are modern, heavily armed, and operating with visible discipline, their presence alone conveying intent. Radar systems rotate, deck crews move with precision, and national flags are clearly visible against a darkening sky. The scene emphasizes symbolism over action, showing that this deployment is not about immediate combat, but about sending an unmistakable message of unity and deterrence. As the camera widens, the scale of the moment becomes clear. This is not a routine military exercise, but a carefully timed demonstration aimed directly at Washington. The synchronized movement of vessels suggests strategic coordination between Moscow and Beijing, reinforcing the idea that any attack on Iran would not be viewed as a regional issue, but as a challenge to a broader power bloc. The silence is striking: no explosions, no radio chatter, only the steady hum of engines cutting through the water, heightening the tension. The scene then subtly connects the maritime display to the political warning itself. News tickers and intelligence overlays fade in, highlighting statements from Russian and Chinese officials urging the United States not to escalate. Analysts interpret the naval presence as a physical manifestation of those words, transforming diplomatic language into visible power. The message is clear: restraint is being demanded, not requested. The atmosphere feels heavy, almost frozen in time. The scene avoids dramatics, relying instead on realism to convey gravity. By the end, the viewer understands that this is a turning point. The warning is not delivered through threats or ultimatums, but through presence and alignment. The scene leaves a lingering realization that global power dynamics are shifting, and any decision made next could redefine not just Middle Eastern stability, but the balance of influence worldwide. The second scene shifts away from the open sea and into the heart of global diplomacy, where the shockwaves of the Russian and Chinese warning begin to register. The atmosphere is tense but restrained, marked by urgency rather than panic. In Washington, senior U.S. officials gather in secure briefing rooms as intelligence assessments arrive from multiple agencies. Large digital displays show satellite imagery of Russian and Chinese naval movements, overlaid with maps of the Middle East and Iran's strategic locations. Analysts speak carefully, emphasizing that this is not an isolated gesture but a coordinated signal meant to alter U.S. calculations. The scene then expands to international institutions, where emergency consultations quietly begin. Diplomats exchange guarded statements, choosing words that signal concern without escalating the situation. The simulation highlights how Moscow and Beijing are using diplomacy in parallel with military symbolism, reinforcing their message through multiple channels. Their warning is framed as a call for restraint, yet the underlying implication is unmistakable: an attack on Iran could trigger consequences far beyond the region. Attention turns briefly to Tehran, where Iranian officials monitor the global response. The atmosphere is cautious but confident. Military commanders review readiness levels, while diplomats emphasize sovereignty and deterrence in carefully crafted statements. The scene underscores that Iran is not celebrating the warning but sees it as strategic cover that shifts pressure back onto Washington. Throughout the scene, media coverage plays a central role. News broadcasts analyze every word, every movement, every facial expression of world leaders. Commentators debate whether this marks a new era of multipolar resistance to U.S. dominance or simply a temporary alignment of interests. The viewer senses that perception itself has become a weapon, shaping markets, alliances, and public opinion. The scene closes on a quiet but powerful note. No decisions are announced, no ultimatums issued. Instead, the world appears to pause, waiting for the next move. The message is clear: the warning has been delivered, the lines have been drawn, and the cost of miscalculation has never been higher. The third scene moves from diplomatic exchanges into the deeper layers of strategic calculation, where military readiness, intelligence analysis, and alliance management intersect. The atmosphere becomes quieter but more intense, reflecting the seriousness of decisions being weighed behind closed doors. In this part of the simulation, attention centers on intelligence and defense command centers across multiple countries, all reacting simultaneously to the coordinated warning issued by Russia and China. Large screens display real-time satellite imagery, naval movements, and airspace activity, with analysts carefully tracking every shift in posture. The sense of urgency is present, but it is controlled, shaped by the understanding that misinterpretation could lead to irreversible consequences. In Washington, defense planners examine potential response scenarios. Rather than focusing on immediate action, the discussion revolves around restraint, escalation management, and signaling. Military officials emphasize that any move toward Iran must now account for the presence and interests of two other major powers. The simulation highlights how deterrence works in layers. Each action or statement is evaluated not only for its direct impact, but for how it will be perceived by rivals and allies alike. Silence, delay, and ambiguity become strategic tools in themselves. The scene then shifts briefly to Moscow and Beijing, where officials assess whether their message has landed. The tone is calm and deliberate. There is no public triumph, only careful monitoring of U.S. reactions and global media narratives. The fourth scene shifts the focus to the economic and strategic aftershocks triggered by Russia and China's warning, revealing how pressure builds far beyond military and diplomatic arenas. The atmosphere is quieter but no less intense. Global financial centers come into view as markets react nervously to the possibility of a wider conflict. Trading floors in Asia, Europe, and the United States light up with sudden volatility, oil prices ticking upward as analysts factor in the risk of disruption in the Middle East. Energy security becomes the central concern, with experts warning that even the perception of conflict involving Iran could threaten shipping routes and global supply chains. The scene then transitions to strategic planning rooms in allied nations. Governments dependent on Middle Eastern energy quietly reassess contingency plans, discussing alternative suppliers, emergency reserves, and diplomatic outreach. The simulation highlights how Russia and China's warning has forced many countries into uncomfortable calculations. Even states not directly involved in the confrontation must now consider where they stand if tensions escalate. The world feels increasingly divided, not by ideology alone, but by vulnerability and dependence. Attention briefly returns to Moscow and Beijing, where officials monitor global reactions with careful detachment. The scene emphasizes restraint in their posture. There are no victory statements or aggressive declarations, only measured commentary reinforcing the call for stability and non-escalation. This restraint itself is portrayed as strategic, suggesting confidence that the warning has already achieved its primary objective by complicating U.S. decision-making. Media narratives play a crucial role in this scene. Headlines vary sharply across regions, some framing the warning as responsible global leadership, others as a challenge to international norms. Social media amplifies speculation, misinformation, and fear, showing how rapidly uncertainty spreads in the modern information age. The scene closes with a symbolic visual of global trade routes glowing across a digital map, many passing through the Middle East. As the lines flicker under growing tension, the message becomes clear: this confrontation is not just about military action or political pride. It is about stability, livelihoods, and the fragile systems that connect the world. The warning has turned a regional question into a global concern, raising the stakes for every decision that follows.